You know, people like to believe that betrayal starts with a decision. Like there's this clear line you have to choose to cross. But the truth? It starts way before that. It starts in the quiet, in the lonely places, in the moments when you're reaching out and nobody's reaching back. I used to think I was stronger than temptation, that I could never be that woman. But pain has a way of making liars out of all of us. It's been 2 years since that night. 2 long years of smiling like nothing happened, laughing at the right jokes, sitting across the dinner table from the man I promised forever to, and feeling like a ghost in my own life. Some nights, I still hear the sound of his key turning in the door and my whole body tightens. Not because I'm afraid he knows, but because deep down, I'm terrified he'll never know. And I'll be stuck carrying this secret alone until the day I die. You see, this didn't start with passion, or with some wild, forbidden lust. It started with a look across a room, a touch that lingered half a second too long, a laugh shared over a dumb joke when the house was too empty for too many nights in a row. It started when the man who should have been holding me was miles away, and his best friend was standing right there, looking at me like I wasn't invisible, like I wasn't forgotten. And the worst part? It didn't feel dangerous. It felt safe, familiar, comforting even. They say the devil comes dressed in red with a pitchfork. But mine? He showed up in jeans, carrying a bottle of wine, smiling like he knew every crack inside me. And he wasn't afraid to get cut. Stay with me, please. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's not simple. It's not black and white. It's messy. It's human. And it could happen to anyone. To the happiest wife. To the most faithful heart. To the loneliest soul hiding behind the brightest smile. Before you judge me, before you turn away, just hear me out. Walk with me through that night. Feel what I felt. See what I saw. And then you tell me, was it really a choice? If you believe the human heart is more complicated than people like to admit. If you've ever felt yourself slipping down a path you swore you'd never walk, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We lay bare the hidden corners of the human heart. I used to think loneliness was just a feeling. Something you carry around inside you, quiet and manageable. I didn't know it could change the way you see the world. The way it could sneak into every corner of your life until it was all you could taste, all you could breathe. I lived in a beautiful house on the edge of a quiet street, big enough for a family we never got around to having. Big enough for dreams that never quite took root. Every window looked out onto neat little lawns, happy little families. And every night I sat by those windows, waiting for a man who always had somewhere else to be. Eric, my husband, my partner, the man I promised to love and honor even when it hurt. He wasn't a bad man. He wasn't cruel. He didn't scream or cheat or drink too much or gamble our savings away. He was steady, predictable, reliable. And somehow, over the years, he'd become a stranger standing 2 feet away from me. He loved me. In the way you love a house you never come home to. Proud to have it. Happy it was there. But not thinking much about what it needed to stay standing. Work always came first. Late nights, early flights, missed anniversaries, broken promises. And I told myself it was normal. That every marriage went through seasons like this. That if I just held on tight enough, long enough, he'd find his way back to me. But the truth is, some people don't even realize they've left. And some of us are too afraid to admit we've been abandoned. It was in one of those long stretches of silence that Mark started showing up more. Mark, who had known Eric since they were kids. Mark, who had laughed with us at our wedding, toasted us on our anniversary, helped us move into this too big house with its too many empty rooms. Mark was all the things Eric used to be before life wore him down. Easy to talk to, quick to laugh. The kind of man who noticed when you changed your hair or when your smile didn't quite reach your eyes. I told myself it was harmless, that it meant nothing. Friends help friends. That's all it was. But deep down I knew. I knew the way your body knows when a storm is coming long before the sky darkens. It was the kind of summer where the air hung heavy even after the sun went down, where the heat clung to your skin and the nights felt too big, too empty. The kind of summer where everything felt swollen, stretched thin, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. And maybe I was waiting too. Waiting for something, anything, to make me feel alive again. The nights got longer. The days blurred together. I stopped sleeping through the night. Started waking up to the hollow sound of my own breathing. Sometimes I would sit on the porch, just staring out into the thick, humming darkness, listening to the cicadas, feeling the sweat trickle down my back, and thinking, is this it? Is this what love turns into when nobody's looking? That's when I started hearing it. A different kind of silence. Not the cold, empty kind Eric left behind, but a warm, living thing. Laughter. From across the street. From Mark's porch. And, for the first time in a long time, loneliness had a sound. Not just an ache in my chest, but a real, living thing that taunted me every time the sun went down. Some nights, I would hear the faint clink of bottles, the low rumble of his voice, the soft, easy laugh that used to echo in our house too, once upon a time. And I would sit there, in the dark, clutching a lukewarm glass of wine, telling myself that I wasn't lonely, that I wasn't jealous, that I was fine. But the truth? I wasn't fine. I hadn't been fine for a long time. I was the invisible woman in my own marriage, needed, but not seen. Wanted, but only when it was convenient. Loved, but in a way that made me feel small. And Mark. Mark was everything Eric had stopped being, not in a dangerous way. Or at least, not yet. Just in the way he made the air feel lighter when he was near. In the way he made the emptiness shrink a little, just for a moment. I didn't think it meant anything at the time. I didn't think anything could happen. Not really. Not to me. But looking back now, I realize how naive I was. How dangerous it is to leave someone starving for affection and then act surprised when they start craving it from the wrong places. The cracks were already there. We just didn't see them. Or maybe we didn't want to. Until the night everything changed. It was a Thursday when Eric told me he was leaving. Another last-minute trip. Another work retreat that just couldn't be moved. 2 weeks this time. 2 weeks of empty rooms and colder sheets. 2 weeks of pretending it didn't bother me when he tossed his suitcase on the bed and barely kissed me goodbye. I stood there, watching him pack, feeling something heavy and invisible settle over my chest. He was humming to himself like it was just another Thursday. Like he wasn't leaving anything behind. I smiled. I wished him good luck. I told him to call when he landed. And when the door shut behind him, when his car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I exhaled. A slow, quiet breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. The first few days were easy. In a strange, guilty way, it almost felt like a relief. No awkward dinners. No reaching across a chasm that never seemed to close. Just me in the silence, and the freedom to stop pretending for a little while. I made simple meals. I stayed up too late. I let the dishes sit in the sink. I played music loud and walked barefoot across the cold kitchen tiles. It felt like I had stepped out of my life and into some softer, sadder version of myself. But it didn't last. By the 4th day, the walls felt closer. The house started humming with a kind of loneliness that pressed against my skin. The silence grew teeth. And every hour stretched longer than the one before. That's when I heard it again. The laughter. Drifting across the street. Low and warm and familiar. Mark. It was almost dark when I heard the knock. Soft, easy, like he already knew I was awake, staring into the nothing. I opened the door, and there he was. Standing on my porch like he belonged there. A bottle of wine dangling from one hand, that same lopsided grin I used to tease him about stretched across his face. Thought you might need some company, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I I smiled back. It didn't even occur to me to say no. It didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel like anything at all. We sat on the porch steps, passing the bottle back and forth, talking about everything and nothing. The heat of the day still clung to the air, thick and slow. Every breath felt heavy. Every laugh seemed to linger a little longer than it should have. At some point, the conversation shifted, got quieter, closer. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, you could come over tomorrow. We'll have dinner. Just friends. Nothing weird. And I nodded, like it was the most innocent thing in the world. Like it meant nothing. I told myself it was harmless. A way to pass another long, empty night. A way to feel a little less invisible for a few hours. It felt like pulling a thorn out before it could burrow too deep. But what I didn't know was that I was already bleeding. I just hadn't felt it yet. That night, after Mark left, I sat alone in the living room. The bottle of wine was still half full, sitting on the coffee table, catching the soft glow from the porch light outside. I stared at it for a long time, like it might have the answer I was too afraid to say out loud. Dinner. Just dinner. Nothing weird. That's what he said. That's what I told myself too. But deep down, something twisted in my gut. A small, uneasy flutter I didn't want to name. I walked through the house, touching things that suddenly felt foreign. The edge of the couch where Eric used to sit, glued to his laptop. The cold handle of the fridge door I opened and closed 100 times a week without anyone ever noticing. The bed, still half-made, still too big for just me. I sat on the edge of it and let my mind drift. To all the nights I reached for him under the covers and found nothing but distance. To all the unanswered texts, the missed calls. The birthdays marked by apology flowers and promises that always came too late. The anniversaries spent alone with takeout and a fading hope that next year would be different. I wasn't craving romance. I wasn't craving sex. I was craving existence. To be seen by someone, anyone. To feel, even for a moment, like I wasn't fading into the walls of my own life. And Mark. He saw me. Or at least, he made me believe he did. I kept playing it over and over in my head. How he smiled when he looked at me. How he didn't check his phone every 5 minutes. How he laughed like the world wasn't pulling him in 100 different directions. Like I was enough to keep him still for a while. It's just dinner. It's just Mark. I'm still married. I'm still faithful. Right? The words felt hollow even as I thought them. A thin, shaky shield I wrapped around myself because the truth was too dangerous to touch. The heart has a way of hearing what it wants to hear. It knows how to take the words and twist them just enough to make them fit. It knows how to silence the parts of you that are screaming for you to turn back. I told myself that loneliness wasn't an excuse. That needing something didn't give you permission to break everything you promised to protect. But even as I told myself all the right things, I felt the ground shifting under my feet. Subtle. Soft. Like standing on sand right before the tide rushes in. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't naive. I knew the rules. But rules don't mean much when you've been starving long enough. When every polite smile and casual touch feels like a sip of water in a desert you don't even remember walking into. I sat there for hours, watching the shadows stretch across the walls, listening to the clock tick away the seconds. And somewhere between midnight and morning, I made a decision. Or maybe I let the decision make me. Tomorrow, I would go. Tomorrow, I would sit across from Mark and pretend we were just friends. Tomorrow, I would pretend that the small, dangerous thing growing between us wasn't real. And maybe if I pretended hard enough, it would all stay harmless. Maybe if I smiled wide enough, laughed loud enough, looked away fast enough, I could keep pretending until the pretending became true. I didn't know then how much pretending can cost. How much weight one tiny lie can carry. How something so small, so innocent, can crack open a life you thought was safe. I didn't know then that there are some doors you can't ever close again once they've been opened. But I was about to find out. The next evening, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have, changing outfits 3 times, telling myself it didn't matter, telling myself it wasn't a date. It wasn't anything. Just dinner between friends. The house across the street glowed soft and welcoming in the early summer dusk. Mark had left the porch light on. It felt almost too easy to cross that distance. Just a few steps between 2 doorways. Between 2 different versions of myself. When he opened the door, he smiled like he'd been waiting for me all day. No judgment. No hesitation. Just that easy, open way he had about him. We ate on his back porch. The food was simple: grilled chicken, corn on the cob, a salad he sheepishly admitted he bought pre-made. We talked about everything and nothing. Old movies, the neighbors, ridiculous stories from high school that made me laugh louder than I had in months. And maybe it was the wine. Or the warm, heavy air. Or the way Mark looked at me like I was a secret he was grateful to know. But everything felt electric. Every glance. Every brush of his arm when he passed me a plate. Every laugh that lingered just a little too long. By the end of the night, when I stood to leave, he didn't touch me. Didn't say anything out of place. Just smiled and said, "Same time tomorrow?" And I nodded. Because saying no would have felt like breaking something delicate we had just started building. And I wasn't ready to break anything. Not yet. The second night was easier. Too easy. Like we had slipped into some private world where everything outside the porch lights didn't exist. We ate pizza straight from the box, sitting side by side on his living room floor. I can't even remember half of what we talked about. It wasn't about the words. It was about the way it felt. The way he laughed at my bad jokes. The way his knee brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. The way his fingers accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, grazed mine when he passed me another slice. It was a small thing. A stupid thing. The kind of touch you could explain away 100 different ways. But my body noticed. Every nerve in my skin noticed. And when I got up to leave, his hug lasted a little longer than it needed to. Just a few seconds. But long enough for me to feel the quiet war happening inside my chest. Long enough for me to wonder if I was still pretending. Or if I had already crossed a line I couldn't see. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel the warmth of his hand on my back. Still hear the low rumble of his voice in my ear when he said goodnight. Still feel that part of me that had been asleep for so long start to wake up. The third night, he invited me over for a movie. No big deal. Just a movie. Just 2 old friends trying to pass the time. That's what I told myself. I wore a simple sundress. Something casual. Something that said, "This isn't a big deal." Something that didn't say what my heart was screaming inside my chest. The lights were low when I got there. The living room lit only by the flicker of the TV screen and the soft glow from the kitchen. He handed me a glass of wine, and our fingers brushed again. This time, he didn't pull away so fast. And neither did I. We sat close on the couch. Closer than we needed to. Close enough that I could smell the faint hint of his cologne. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. I couldn't tell you what the movie was about. I didn't watch a second of it. I was too busy memorizing the way his fingers tapped against the wine glass. The way he leaned back, relaxed, at ease. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't looking. The air between us changed. Shifted. Got heavier. The way his fingertips brushed my wrist when he passed me the wine glass. The way his laugh filled the emptiness that used to live inside my chest. It was too much and not enough all at once. Somewhere between the second glass of wine and the third, the movie ended. Neither of us moved to turn on another. We just sat there. In the dark. In the silence. In the weight of everything unspoken between us. He turned to me. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me every chance to stop this before it started. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt seen. That night, as he leaned in to say goodnight, something changed. And I didn't pull away. His face was so close to mine I could feel the heat of his breath on my skin. There was a moment, just a second hanging there between us, where the world seemed to stop spinning. Where I could have turned away. Where I could have laughed it off, made a joke, saved us both. But I didn't. And he didn't. His lips brushed mine, hesitant, trembling, almost afraid. Not forceful. Not demanding. Just searching. Like he was asking a question with no words, and my body answered before my mind had time to scream no. It was a kiss you could almost pretend hadn't happened. Almost. Soft. Quick. Fragile enough to deny if we needed to. But I didn't pull away fast enough. I let it happen. And for that one terrible, beautiful moment, I let myself be wanted. I let myself feel alive. I pulled back first. Breathless. Shaking. Heart pounding so loud in my chest I was sure he could hear it. Mark's eyes widened like he hadn't meant for it to happen. Like he'd just remembered who we were, what we were risking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Voice low, raw. He backed away, hands up, like he was afraid he might shatter me if he got any closer. Like he was afraid he might shatter himself. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Something between us had broken open. Something we couldn't shove back inside, no matter how hard we tried. Something that was alive now, breathing, growing in the space between us. I stood up too fast, nearly knocking my glass off the table. Mumbled something I don't even remember. Grabbed my keys with trembling fingers. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. Because if I saw the regret, or worse, the longing, in his eyes, I knew I wouldn't have the strength to walk away. I stumbled out into the night, the thick summer air pressing against my skin like a second guilt I couldn't scrub off. The street was silent, every window dark except mine. A whole neighborhood asleep. No witnesses. No one to see the woman who had just shattered her own reflection. My heart slammed against my ribs the whole way home. My hands shook so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. When I finally made it inside, I pressed my back against the door and slid down to the floor. And I sat there, in the dark, feeling the ghost of his lips still lingering on mine. And I hated myself. Hated the way my skin still burned where he touched me. Hated the way a part of me, small and selfish and desperate, wished I hadn't pulled away at all. I hated myself for the way it made me feel alive. I buried my face in my hands and tried to breathe. Tried to pretend I hadn't just set fire to everything I thought I was. Tried to pretend that if I stayed very still, if I wished hard enough, maybe it would all just go away. But it wouldn't. It was too late. Something had changed, and no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't go back to the woman I was before that kiss. If you've ever crossed a line you swore you never would. If you've ever stood in the wreckage of your own choices, wondering how you got there, tell me in the comments. Because what happened next, I never saw coming. The next morning, everything felt wrong. The light coming through the windows was too bright. The air too still. Every sound too loud, every silence too heavy. It was like the whole world knew what I had done, even if no one had seen it. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I thought Mark would call. Maybe I thought he'd show up at my door like nothing happened. Maybe I thought I could pretend hard enough that we could still be what we were before the kiss. But he didn't call. He didn't show up. And I didn't reach out either. There was a distance between us now, a thick, heavy thing we both knew better than to touch. I still heard him sometimes, across the street. Doors opening, muffled music, the low rumble of a TV drifting into the night. But he didn't come by, not even to wave from the porch. The silence between us was louder than any argument could have been. And then Eric came home. He pulled into the driveway with his usual tired smile and armful of souvenirs. Keychains. T-shirts. Little things he thought made up for all the ways he had left me alone. He kissed me on the forehead like he always did. Warm. Familiar. Safe. And all I could think about was how Mark's kiss had tasted like regret. Eric unpacked his bags while telling me stories about his trip, the meetings, the golf games, the coworkers I'd never met. He laughed when he talked about the late nights, the endless drinks, the jokes that didn't even seem funny anymore. And I laughed too, the sound brittle and hollow in my own ears. He didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't want to. That night, we sat side by side on the couch, his arm around my shoulder, the TV flickering mindlessly in front of us, his thumb absently tracing circles on my arm, the way he used to when we first got married. And I felt like I was drowning. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. And because loving him hadn't been enough to stop what happened. Because love, by itself, isn't armor. And sometimes, it's not even a lifeline. I went through the motions. Smiling, cooking dinner, laughing at the right moments, pretending to fall asleep in his arms when my mind was 1,000 miles away. But inside, something was rotting. Something I couldn't name and couldn't fix. And then, one night, as I sat in bed pretending to scroll through my phone, the screen lit up with a message. From Mark. Just a few words. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have crossed the line. I'll stay away. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred together. Until the whole world seemed to collapse into that one small, stupid text. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. No way to unwrite what had already been written between us. No way to untangle the knot we had tied, even if we both wanted to. And, just like that, he disappeared. No more knocks at the door. No more bottles of wine. No more laughter drifting through the heavy summer nights. Just silence. Just me, sitting in the middle of the life I had built. In the middle of the marriage I had promised to protect. Alone. Alone with the wreckage. Alone with the memory of a kiss that shouldn't have happened. Alone with the aching, burning knowledge that once you open certain doors, you can never quite shut them again. In the days that followed, I lived two lives. The one everyone could see, the wife, the neighbor, the woman who smiled and nodded and folded laundry and made grocery lists. And the one no one saw, the woman who carried a secret like a stone pressed against her chest, making it harder to breathe with every passing day. I kept asking myself the same questions, over and over, turning them around in my head like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. Was it betrayal, if nothing really happened? If it was just a kiss, just a moment, just a breath shared too long between two people who should have known better? Was that enough to shatter the vows we swore? Or was the real betrayal something deeper? Older? Something that had started long before Mark leaned in that night. Long before his lips brushed mine. Long before I let myself believe, even for a second, that someone else could make me feel whole again. Is longing itself a betrayal? Is the quiet ache of wanting someone else to see you, to choose you, to make you feel alive again enough to call everything you promised into question? I thought about Eric. About the man I married. About the way he used to look at me like I was something he'd never quite believe he deserved. About the way he used to hold me just a little too tight, like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. When did we lose that? Was it the late nights? The missed calls? The dinners eaten alone while he worked through another crisis I wasn't part of? Or was it me? Was it the part of me that stopped fighting for his attention when it got too exhausting? The part that started building walls instead of bridges, brick by lonely brick? Was the marriage already broken long before Mark touched my hand? Maybe that kiss wasn't the beginning. Maybe it was just the moment the cracks we refused to see finally split wide open. Maybe the real betrayal wasn't the kiss. Maybe it was the 1,000 times before that I dreamed of it. The 1,000 quiet moments I wished someone else's laughter filled my house. The 1,000 empty nights I curled up alone and wondered if love was supposed to feel this hollow. Maybe it was every time I smiled when I wanted to scream. Every time I said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. Every time I swallowed my own loneliness so deep it started to taste like survival. The guilt gnawed at me. A slow, steady ache that never quite faded, no matter how many times I tried to tell myself it didn't count. That it wasn't real. that I was still a good wife because I hadn't gone any further. But late at night, when the house was dark and Eric's breathing was soft and steady beside me, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the guilt wrap itself tighter and tighter around my ribs until it hurt to breathe. Because deep down I knew, you don't have to touch someone to betray the life you built. Sometimes, all it takes is wanting. And I wanted. I wanted so badly it scared me. I never told Eric. Never whispered a word about that night. Never let it slip into the spaces between us. And even now, all this time later, I don't know if that makes me loyal. Or a coward. Maybe both. Maybe neither. All I know is that some ghosts don't live in graveyards. Some live inside you. Inside the choices you didn't mean to make. Inside the words you didn't say. Inside the dreams you were too afraid to follow. And sometimes, they stay with you. Not to haunt you, but to remind you that you are human. And humans. We are always just one lonely night away from losing the things we swore we'd never let go of. Have you ever found yourself standing at the edge of a line you swore you would never cross? Not because you stopped loving someone, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot what it felt like to be loved at all? Have you ever found yourself reaching for something you knew you shouldn't want? Just because it felt like breathing for the first time in forever? We all like to think we're stronger than the temptation. We all like to believe that love alone is enough. But sometimes, it's not about love. Sometimes, it's about survival. Sometimes, it's about that desperate, aching need to be seen, to be held, to be known, even if just for a moment. Please, tell me in the comments, was I a villain? A traitor to everything I promised? Or just a broken woman, longing to be seen? I don't ask for judgment. I'm not looking for absolution. Just your truth. Because maybe, somewhere in your story, there's a part of mine. And maybe, if we speak them out loud, they won't feel so heavy anymore. If stories like this stir something deep inside you, if they pull at the parts of you that you keep hidden even from yourself, please like this video. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Desire doesn't knock on your door wearing warning signs. It doesn't show up flashing red lights or shouting at you to run. Sometimes, it whispers through the laughter of an old friend. It brushes your hand when you're not looking. It smiles at you across a table cluttered with empty wine glasses and broken promises. Sometimes, it hides inside the loneliness you've spent years pretending wasn't there. It curls up inside the spaces your love didn't quite fill. It grows in the cracks of the life you tried so hard to keep perfect. And sometimes, it leaves you with a choice. A choice you think you can make just once. A choice you think you can leave behind. But it's not that simple. Because that choice, it echoes. It echoes in every silent dinner. Every forced smile. Every moment you wonder if the person sitting next to you would still choose you, if they really saw you. It echoes in the quiet, in the dark, in the long spaces between forgiveness and forgetting. It becomes a part of you, a thread woven into the fabric of your life, no matter how badly you wish you could pull it out. So please, guard your heart, even when it feels forgotten. Especially then. Because sometimes the things that hurt us most don't come crashing in like a storm. They come quietly, softly, wrapped in comfort, wrapped in laughter, wrapped in the desperate need to feel alive again. And by the time you realize you've opened the door, it's already too late to close it without losing a piece of yourself.